6:30 this evening. I assume you still want to speak?
I do. I might sound a little jittery. It's cold in
Okay.
here.
Ms. Nye is the spokesperson for people concerned about MIC. Thank you.
Chairman Breslin, thank you, and board members, thank you, and community members, thank you for coming. My name is Maya Nye, and I am the spokesperson for the community organization People Concerned About MIC. I am also a community activist and an accidental environmentalist. I'm also a union member. People Concerned About MIC is a community organization in the Kanawha Valley dedicated to the protection of health and safety of all of those who reside, work, and study in the vicinity of local chemical plants producing highly toxic chemicals. The group formed because concerned community members learned that methyl isocyanate, or commonly referred to as MIC, same chemical that killed and injured hundreds of thousands of people in Bhopal in 1984, was being produced in our backyard. Now, I was a child when People Concerned About MIC was formed in the mid-1980s. I barely remember the Bhopal disaster, and I vaguely remember evacuating 8 months after in the incident that occurred here at the Institute that sent more than 100 people to the hospital, including Ray Swan and Pam Nixon. But I tell you what, I clearly remember the incident that occurred in 1993 in August that occurred near the MIC tanks, and it killed 2 workers and sent many people to the hospital. I was sitting in my living room about a crow's mile away from the plant, and I felt and heard a loud boom. I thought a tree limb might have fallen on my house, and the next thing I knew, I lived on a one-way street, and the next thing I knew, there was a fire truck going down my road the wrong way, saying, "There's a shelter in place in effect. Close all doors and windows and turn off all air conditioners and ventilation systems until further notice." As you can imagine, I was pretty panicked at that point. So I called my father, who, yes, was a Union Carbide employee, and I called to ask him what to do. And with no information, he told me to hang tight. So I hung up the phone, and the smell had already invaded my house. I called my father again, only this time I couldn't get through because the phone lines were jammed. Frantically, I grabbed some duct tape, and I started taping around the windows and taping around the doors like they taught us to do in school. Only it didn't work because there were too many windows and too many doors, and the smell had already invaded my house. So I sat there with my dog, crying and hoping. But that wasn't the last phone call that I was ever going to have with my father. I was 16 years old. My story is only one of thousands in this community and in communities across the world in harm's way of a chemical plant. It's a story that has occurred time and time again, and unfortunately it continues to occur. I recently spoke to a friend who has been diagnosed with cancer, and she attributes her cancer and her recently deceased neighbor to living within spitting distance of a chemical plant. I asked her if she would give an interview to a newspaper reporter, and she responded, "What can I say that I haven't already said for the last 25 years?" So I sit before you today, not because I am an ominous fanatical activist, as Bayer's press strategies would allow you to believe, but because 15 years ago, almost to the day, my life was changed forever when the methyllarvin unit exploded, the exact same one. And again, I felt the explosion. Only this time I was 10 miles away in Charleston. Again, it killed 2 workers. Again, notification of the incident severity was not given in due time to the people who are immediately affected by the incident. Again, it caused lots of property damage to local residents, which Bayer wasn't entirely interested in addressing until the watchful eye of Congress came down. And again, many side effects have been caused to our community that we may not fully understand for years. So while the plant names and managers have changed, the effects to our community remain the same, and they bioaccumulate across lines of ownership. We did not form our community around this chemical plant. This chemical plant was formed in our community, and it planted itself right next to a historically black university in an unincorporated, primarily African-American neighborhood that is adjacent only to mountains, rivers, and poor white neighborhoods. Now, the history of discrimination is clear to us and to anyone who would look at our history without bias. The continued discrimination is clear when 25 years later, the same voices are saying the exact same things, and little has been done to change the talking points. For 25 years, people concerned about MIC has made great strides to ensure effective communications with the Institute facility, regardless of entity control. Our goals have been to establish access to information about the dangers existing in our community and to eliminate as many of those dangers as possible in the production of highly toxic chemicals. Our efforts have been modeled and orchestrated not only national community right to know laws, but the worst case scenario modeling that you saw earlier this evening. In one fell swoop, in August of 2008, BayerCropScience slammed the door on 25 years worth of community efforts, visualized only by the lock that, the chain that still locks the gate to our evacuation route to this day. Our group has been accused by some of trying to eliminate jobs, and to this I retort, the chemical industry put food on my table, so don't tell me I don't understand the need for industry. Chemical dollars and scholarships sent me to college. We understand the need for industry. However, we deserve the kind of jobs and the kind of industry that does not cause the untimely death and preventable death of workers or the bioaccumulation of toxins in our children's bodies. We deserve an economy that is not solely based on extractive and chemical industries that tell us that we must choose between jobs and health. We are not acceptable risk factors. We come before you today asking that you finally hear our voices, and I think you have started listening, and I appreciate it. And we ask that you make recommendations to our government and industry that stop this systematic exploitation of our community. We are tired, I think that's an understatement, but we are tired of smoke and mirrors and caging on answers, and our lives are in your hands, and we deserve to know the truth about the dangers that exist in our community, and we shouldn't have to, months and months later, go to D.C. and watch folks testify before Congress before we get that information. We hope that the CSB recommends that the box can no longer guard the hen house, and that corporate arguments based on non-operational monitoring systems will no longer be acceptable. I want to commend the Chemical Safety Board for requesting our presence on this panel, especially after the public relations strategies to marginalize us. Thank you for your continued effort to include community concern into the conversation regarding chemical safety. It's one of the most important voices that you'll ever have. We request a thorough and comprehensive investigation and an even more thorough recommendation to industry and government that addresses the underlying issues at hand and looks across the lines of ownership. Thank you.
How would you, Ms. Nye, how would you assess the relationship between the community and Bayer? And I don't necessarily mean your organization, but the community in general in this area. And how, if you, well, I'll let you answer that part first.
Well, I think you could probably see from the show of concern in this room that there's not a whole lot of trust in the efforts that have been put forward by Bayer.
If you were to make suggestions to Bayer for ways to improve it, what would you do?
Crucial information in a timely fashion would be truthful, yes, truthful information in a timely fashion, most definitely. truthful information that impacts us. I mean, such as what the chemicals are that are being released that we may not know are impacting us, because the reports that were given earlier in regards to the firefighters are not the only reports that there were of health concerns. I would like that to be acknowledged. But there were many reports from from community members that were not listed there, and I'm not sure how we compile that information. Not everyone went to the hospital. You know, a lot of people are just used to suffering and dealing with it.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you to all of the panelists for being here this evening and expressing some very interesting points of view and very